Welcome, everybody. David Shepard on CBS Sports Radio nationally, border to border and coast to coast. Great to be with you, however and wherever you may be listening from. We are joined by a wonderful human being, first and foremost. He also happens to be a three-time NBA champion. That is the great Scott Williams. Scott, how you doing, man? How you been?
Dave, I'm doing fantastic. It has been a fun ride in college basketball this year. We've seen, a lot of teams moving up and down that top 25 board. It seems like any given night, man, that somebody can go into another team's home court or home arena and pull off the upset. I mean, we haven't even reached March yet, and the BYU Cougars upset Kansas Jayhawks, breaking a 19-game win streak, handing them their first home loss of the season. So, I had to throw that out there because my old teammate from the Milwaukee Bucks, Mark Pope, is now the head coach there at BYU. So, good win for the Cougars.
All right. So, listen, everyone wants to hear about Scott Williams' take on what Scottie and Luke and Horace are doing with the No Bull Tour. But if you want to talk college for a little bit, let's do that. So, Scott, here's what I don't understand. You're a UNC Tar Heel legend, and you're broadcasting for the Grand Canyon Antelopes. They're not blue, they're purple. How does that come about?
Yeah. So, you kind of get it where you fit in, right? Like I always wanted to return to Chapel Hill in some capacity, either in television or radio or coaching, but the opportunities just weren't there. And so after I was coaching in the Milwaukee Bucks, we all got let go late in the season, couldn't grab another coaching gig, and GCU came knocking. And it's funny that I didn't even know where I had been living in the Valley. But I didn't know where Grand Canyon University was. And I turned them down twice, thinking I was going to have to drive 4 hours north up to the Grand Canyon to do games. And finally they said, would you meet with the university president, President Mueller, great dude. He goes, dude, we're just out. We're 20 minutes down the road on Camelback. So, finally I agreed, well, yeah, I'll do it for 1 year. And I love the atmosphere over there. I love being back involved with college athletics, the students, the cheer section they have. It's the Havocs. It's one great arena on campus, holds about 8,500 people. And that place is just a madhouse. And I have just been doing it now for 9 seasons. And I'm truly blessed to be working with Barry Butel, my play-by-play partner, and Kate Longworth, who does our pre and post game and sideline reporting. So we got a great crew over there, and I feel really blessed to be part of that team.
That's an awesome journey that you've been on in terms of your broadcasting career. There's so many people at UNC that want you a part of their program to this day. Now you do bleed blue. I know that. So
Yeah,
RJ
sure.
Davis, I know you were all over that 42-point game on Monday. It's the most points ever by a Tar Heel in that Smith Center, which has been almost around as you've been alive. So explain how special what it is to score 42 points at the Smith Center when no other Tar Heel has done that in 38 years.
Yeah, fun fact. I once held that record back in 1990 for the most points scored in the Dean Dome with 31 points. So
I
I'm
didn't
going to
know
toot
that.
my own horn for a second.
Right.
Yeah,
I didn't know
against
that.
The University of Virginia, I couldn't wait for them to show up because I always had my best performances about them. I went 12 of 12 from the field and 7 of 8 from the free throw line. So for 31 points, tied the Smith Center record, I think, with one other cat. Maybe Brad Doherty, I believe, might have had that.
He was pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty damn good. Number one pick in the NBA draft. If those Cleveland teams had to run head first into Michael Jordan, they probably would have got a championship with
Mark
Scott,
every team would have got an NBA championship.
John Williams.
Every team would have got an NBA championship if not for Michael Jordan. They say that Barkley, Stockton, Malone, Ewing.
Check you with Patrick Ewing, right?
Right.
But yeah, no, it's great. It's a special place. I bleed blue. I came on tonight wearing my Grand Canyon shirt because I was happy to be able to do that. But Monday night watching RJ Davis, I had on my Lucky Carolina blue kicks. I was so excited for the way that young man went out there and performed. And it turned out to be a nail biter. I don't have any fingernails left today, but yes, lit up the victory cigar after the game, knowing that the Heels now control their own destiny to win yet another Carolina championship.
Absolutely. I mean, they're the number 9 seed in the country, and I will say your Antelopes. I mean, I think they're 24-4.
24-4. They dropped their last two games. They had the
Right.
best record
Right.
in all of college basketball at 24-2, and went down to Texas, a 2-game roadie down to Texas, and got jack stumped. They
Sure.
messed with Texas and got the and got the short end of the stick there, or got poked, or whatever you want to call it. So now they got to come back. Big game tomorrow against Rio Grande Valley at the Global Credit Union Arena, and they're trying to get right game, so to speak. Another team that I think is a great story. The way Bryce Drew has come on this is his 4th season now. He's taken them to the NCAA tournament 2 of the last 3 years, and I think they're poised to win yet another Western Athletic Conference championship and go back to the big dance for three times in 4 years.
Absolutely. And again, we are joined on CBS Sports Radio by 3-time NBA champion Scott Williams. And it's interesting. You talk about, someone who's done something very rare, Bryce Drew. I mean, we all remember the famous shot he had in the NCAA tournament. And then for him to now bring, this university, Grand Canyon, to 2 NCAA tournaments is pretty impressive. But speaking of elite company, I'm sure that you have been told this many times before. You are one of 4 in NBA history to do blank. Do you know what that is?
I do. I know exactly where you're going with this. You go ahead. You go ahead.
No, so I mean, it goes without saying. You've played with arguably the 2 greatest players in the history of the sport, in LeBron and Michael. Now, I've talked to you enough. I know you have number 1 and number 2. You don't have to get into that if you don't want to. But in terms of Michael and LeBron, now, granted,
It's my book.
yeah, I know. Now, in terms of playing with Mike,
Shameless plug there.
no, it's not a shameless plug at all, because I remember you're a renowned author too, Scott Williams. We're not going to sell you short on this program, but Michael and LeBron, their games are so different, right? LeBron is looking to get individuals involved from the onset. Michael was the dynamic, compelling, prolific scorer. He could certainly facilitate, but that's not what was asked of him. But from your perspective, in playing with Jordan in the prime of his career, in comparison to playing with LeBron at the beginning, it might be tough to distinguish this, but what are the main similarities that you saw between those two guys? And I have a feeling you enjoyed playing with both of them.
I really did. And, I went 15 years in the NBA to end up on that Cleveland Cavaliers team with a 19-year-old at the time, LeBron James, he hadn't even turned 20 yet. And you could see from the early moments of training camp that this kid had something special. The desire to compete in practice, the thirst for knowledge in the film sessions, sitting on the back of the plane, talking hoops. It was refreshing to me. I had played with many Hall of Famers along the way after MJ and Pippen. But it was this kid that I noticed that there was really something special about him. Hey, listen, did I know he's going to be 75 points away from scoring 40,000 for his career? I didn't see that coming. I ain't going to say I'm smart enough to be that good of a general manager. But I did see the fact that this kid was going to be, an NBA All-Star, a first team All-NBA.
Scott, excuse me for interrupting. He should have been an All-Star his rookie year. There was a lot of, if you're going to make I understand there's international voting. If you're going to make Yao Ming an All-Star in his rookie year, LeBron James almost had them in the playoffs. I mean, they're the worst team prior to him getting there. How he's not an All-Star as a rookie, yet Magic was an All-Star as a rookie, MJ was an All-Star as a rookie. There was a lot of jealousy because basically by the age of 16, the guy was on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
That's right.
I think that bled over to his time, at least in the beginning in the NBA.
Yeah, there was a little hate for the hype. I think that he had so much coming in, right? The $90 million Nike contract before he scored his first basket, the cover of Sports Illustrated, high school games on ESPN. There was so much hype surrounding the kid. I think they wanted to, hit him with a little humble pie. So, but hey, he took it all in stride, and I don't think the kid has made but maybe one tiny misstep along the course of his 20-year NBA career
21
now.
years now, yeah.
Very, very impressive the way the young man, he's not a young man anymore, but when I had him, he was a young man. The way he always handled himself, whether I was a teammate or a color commentator for the Cavs, he was always gracious. He was always humble. He was always trying to get his teammates, like I said, involved. MJ was a cold-blooded assassin, dude. Like, he had a gear that no other player that ever put on a pair of sneakers in the NBA could reach. But LeBron also found a way to find success at the highest level. So yeah, are they 1A in my opinion? 100%.
Again, we're joined by three-time NBA champion Scott Williams. Scott, you had a front row seat to this for 3 years, and you are going to be a really good person to speak on this. Now, in terms of basketball, I would say wars, I would say tension, I would say just beefs at this point. I remember being a kid of the 80s and 90s, and I can't ever think to myself, hey, Michael and Scottie wouldn't one day get along and they wouldn't be on speaking terms. Unfortunately, that seems to be where we are, at least in that dynamic. I don't think Horace has a lot of love. Horace Grant has a lot of love for MJ. I don't get the sense that Luke Longley does either. Now, obviously, we know you were a big part of those teams in the early 90s. You didn't play with Luke. You did play with Horace and Scottie, obviously. From what you know, do you ever see that relationship being mended between Michael and Scottie? Because we're talking about arguably the greatest 1-2 combination in the history of professional sports.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, there was a special time in my life. I thought it was a special time in all of our lives. We were like rock stars when we traveled around the country or were even home in Chicago. The things that that I was able to experience by being a part of that were so special to me. I'll be honest, I'm saddened by some of the things that I've heard from Scottie and Horace, even on the Lost Dance or after that, or in the rumor mill, or talking to guys in the inner circles of the NBA. Some of the things that are being said, because those teams were so special. Maybe I was young and dumb and oblivious to some of the workings that were going on because I was an undrafted rookie just trying to fight to stay in the league, and happy to have my spot on the bench. But I never saw that side of bitterness or bickering or jealousy. That was something new to me that came out during the Last Dance and thus thereafter. This whole No Bull tour with Luke. And Luke, I write about Luke in my book. I don't write about too many players in my book that aren't mega superstars. And Luke's one of the guys that I write about in my book because he was such a nice guy. He was one of the dudes that opened up his home to the teammates, say, hey, listen, we're going to have, spaghetti or pasta, everyone come on over, shoot some pool and watch a game. He was such a fun teammate to be around. Scottie, same thing. I talk about Scottie, and Horace, how they used to get on my ass as a rookie to, rack the balls and kick them up into the, the 25th row in Philadelphia or something. I have to go run up there and then try to, get them back to the ball rack while Coach Jackson screaming at me to join the rest of the team in the huddle. But they were fun dudes to be around. We were like brothers. And to have seen this family fractured the way that it is, it really makes me sad. It breaks my heart. To answer your question, will they ever mend this? Man, I know MJ, and he feels probably a bit like they have stabbed him in the back for all the things that he helped us all accomplish. And I don't know how much time would have to pass before he would finally say that he's ready to. I don't ever see him forgetting or forgiving. I'll be honest with you. And I'm not in contact with Scottie or Horace or Luke or MJ the way I used to be when I was in the NBA running the circles and bumping into cats. But I got nothing for love for everybody. Boy, would I love. And I was hoping that a year ago for the 30th anniversary of the three-peat, the first three-peat, that we could have done something, whether it was organized by the Chicago Bulls or we all just did something together on our own someplace and spent a night and a day or maybe 2 days and a night someplace just telling lies and getting caught up. And it never really materialized. That was one of the things I bumped into Jerry Reinsdorf over here at the deli one day, and I had my Bulls jersey on, and I told him those were the best times of my life. And I told him about my book, and he read my book. He was like, Williams, you took a cheap shot at me. I go, no, Jerry, it wasn't that. I just wanted to stay in Chicago. I was a little butthurt that, Krause and Coach Jackson, I didn't value my services enough to offer me more than a 1-year contract, 2-year contract. So I had to leave, but I loved it in Chicago. I loved everything about the city. I loved being a Bull. I loved playing with my teammates. yes, I hope that they can find a way to reconcile this fractured relationship.
So, Scott, I'm glad you brought up, the stabbing in the back. By the way, we are joined, of course, by three-time NBA champion Scott Williams, and in fairness to him, he's actually downgrading what he did as a member of the Chicago Bulls' first three-peat because you did start a little bit your third year. I remember that in the 92-93 season. But with that being said, now you mentioned the aspect of backstabbing. Scott, I think a lot. I haven't talked to Scottie about this. I haven't talked to Horace about this, but I think their mindset was they were stabbed in the back first because you're talking about Scottie obviously not entering the game. And we all remember the famous series against the Knicks in 94 when it was Kukoc that hit the game-winning shot and Scottie refused to enter. And then we're talking about Horace Grant, him playing lousy, and MJ talking about Horace not being able to, get served on the plane because of his lousy performance. And I feel like those guys felt that Jordan was taking unnecessary shots at them, where that's a brotherhood. That those kind of stories should be kept in the locker room and shouldn't be aired out in a dirty way and harmful way and deleterious way 25, 30 years later. So to all that being said, Scott, you obviously watched The Last Dance, as did half the world in 2020. Did you not see it being a little bit unfair towards the others aside from Michael Jordan? Obviously, it's his documentary. You didn't see that being a little bit unfair to the likes of Scottie and Horace and kind of tarnishing their reputation to some extent?
I may have to go back and watch that again. What I remember, the things that stuck out to me was Michael saying that Scottie was, his best teammate, like his favorite teammate and the best player that he ever played with.
Said that
Those
all
are kinds of things that resonated with me, and I go, well, how is that a slight when the best player of all time says that about a player? And for Horace, I didn't hear the story about not getting served on the plane. I think sometimes MJ does have a dry humor or dry wit, and it may have come across again as the best player in the world with that mega microphone that he has. That may have come across incorrectly as well. I don't know. I never want to put words in anybody else's mouth. I was careful not to do that when Will Perdue had said that guys were afraid of MJ. I don't know if I saw it the same way as and Will did, but that's his opinion. I always wanted and that's one of the reasons why I think I wrote my book, is I wanted my experience to be my experience. And it's not a sensational book or tell-all book or anything like that.
That's not who you are.
It's not who I am. No, it really isn't. I mean, I could have told some stories about, Jerry Krause and things that, Pippen and I got into on the road, but nobody needs to know that stuff. And those are the inner workings. And maybe that's what you're referring to when some things stay within the, as Phil Jackson would say, the tribe, Big Chief Triangle would say that some of those things have to stay inside the, in the teepee, and you can't let them get out there. Maybe if they had gotten out there, I could see where those guys would be a little bit upset. But I guess maybe to lash back, to take it publicly to where they are taking it. I don't know if that helps anything in the end. Maybe then, other than, like I say, helping their tour.
Right. We're obviously joined by three-time NBA champion Scott Williams. And what I've always respected about Scott, just for anyone, listening and watching this, is that you always play things down the middle. You're never looking to divide a team. You're never looking to alienate anybody. And I think, Scott, if I may make a suggestion, and obviously, these individuals a lot more than I do, and they are alphas. I understand that. But I think it would take someone, like yourself, someone like Bill Wennington. And I know his father recently passed away. So, thoughts and prayers to him.
I did not know that.
Yeah, to him and his family. I think it would take someone like yourself, a basketball lifer, that hasn't pissed off anyone in your life, at least publicly. Because I really do think this is a sad note, considering this is the greatest dynasty in our lifetime in any professional sport. There's never been a dynasty that wins 6 championships in 8 years. And we both know it could have been 8 of 8 if Jordan doesn't go play baseball.
I like that. I like that you said that. Because I agree. If I'd have known he was coming back, I never would have left Chicago. And certainly, as good as those Rockets team was, and I love Hakeem Olajuwon. I say he was the toughest guy I ever had to guard. And I throw Shaq and Patrick and the Flying Dutchman, Rick Smits, and all those, Brad Daugherty and all those cats into that mix. I love Hakeem Olajuwon, but Jordan just doesn't lose, bro. Like you can't put during that time frame, you put him in a 4-game series, especially the NBA Finals. He wasn't going to lose, and we all knew that as long as we did our part. And so, yeah, I believe there would have been a stretch there of, I would say 4, 5, 6, possibly 7 or 8 championships in a row, and that for a basketball team, that would never have been touched upon.
It's
and I
unheard
realized,
of.
okay, after they did it, the Bulls did it again, and then the Lakers did it. And I don't know if anybody else has done it. Hell, Denver might pull it off the way this kid Jokic plays. But it was a Golden State. Did Golden State come close?
No. Golden State. Now, remember, it could have been 4 in a row, but Draymond gets suspended for Game 5. Cavaliers take that on the road. Cavaliers they win the next 2 after that. And if we're talking now again, if the Cavaliers do not win in 2016, you and I both know the Warriors ain't going to get Kevin Durant. So
exactly.
So that in theory that could have been 4 in a row. And it's interesting because if Michael played for an organization, and I mean no disrespect to the late great Jerry Krause, but there was obviously some beefs there, and there was some jealousy, and they didn't exactly sing Kumbaya. I think Michael plays past 35 years old. I think he plays till 2000, 2001. He doesn't come back to play with the Wizards. And then I think you're talking maybe potentially 9 or 10 straight championships. Now, Scott, people are going to listen to this. They're going to push back, and they're going to say, well, Scott and Shep, you have no idea. The Magic actually took out the Bulls in 95. Right. They took out the Bulls in 95. That's fair. But Michael was a month removed from playing baseball, and we saw what happened the next year when he swept the Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals. Scott, speaking of numbers, you're one of 84 guys in NBA history to win 3 NBA championships that happened to be your first 3 years in the league. There's about 5,000 guys that have played in the NBA. So you are 0.16% of NBA basketball players that have won 3 NBA championships. So you're in pretty hollowed ground here. I say that to say this to you. Can you please clarify? And I know you're going to be as honest as possible. There's a lot of backlash about MJ right now. Now, obviously, there's going to be the defenders of him, but there's a lot of people that really empathize with Scottie and Horace and Luke on this No Bull tour because they feel like they got wrong. Now, I've heard some, snips and pieces from this, No Bulls tour. It's not even bashing Jordan. It's really just talking about what it was like playing on those Bulls teams, which I know is going to be music to your ears. But set the record straight. We all know Michael Jordan is arguably the greatest athlete in any team sport in history. But as a teammate, what was he like?
Demanding. There's no doubt about that. You had to be locked in and focused anytime we were in a team setting. There was no half stepping in anything that we did when it involved Michael Jordan. And that's everything from the game to film session to weight training to conditioning, of course, to practice planning. You needed to be 100% committed all the time because that's how he rolled. He felt as though if I'm not taking any moments off, even though I dropped 35 points in the Garden on the 4th night of a back-to-back situation, then I demand that from the rest of my teammates as well. And if you just wanted to be about the lifestyle and the fame and the fortune, the cars and the girls, that wasn't going to fly with MJ. He didn't take any shortcuts, and he demanded that everybody on that team didn't either. And there'd be some days where, dude, we're just not as good as you. And you kind of want to try to put it in second gear and kind of cruise through a practice and half-ass it. Oops, excuse me. But you had to be going all the way, every gear that you had. If he saw that you weren't putting it in a gear that he knew you were capable, that's when you ran into problems with Mike. If you didn't try to shortcut or get out of some work, he had no problems with MJ. He understood that you weren't as talented as him. He couldn't do the things that you wanted to do. That was Kevin Williams, right? They called me Tank. I barely jump over 3 phone books, right? So, but he knew I had a role to play. I better dive on the floor. I better screen and roll hard. I better sprint back in defense. I better be there on help side defense. I better know the scouting plan to the opponent's tendencies. You got to be locked into all that stuff. You be in the right place at the right time in that triangle offense. It took a lot of work. That was no simple offense that Tex Winter and Phil Jackson had assembled in Chicago. It was very sublime. So yeah, you had to be smart.
Right.
Did my
Pretty sublime.
Yeah, but you had to be locked into it. You couldn't mess up, and that just went with preparation of the game. So yeah, was he an easy teammate to get along with? No, but we accomplished greatness not because of, and not, I'm not gonna say not because of Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson was a wonderful coach.
Sure.
What it takes in the NBA, unlike some of the other sports, because there ain't but 12 to 15 dudes that are on the roster, and of that, only 8, maybe 9 guys are going to be in the mix on a nightly basis, that you need the best player on the team to be the leader. As much as the head coach is the head coach, and he divvies out the minutes and the shots and all that kind of stuff, the best player, the taskmaster that holds everybody accountable, is the best player on the team. And MJ, like he says in The Last Dance, some guys didn't like him because they pushed him some places he didn't necessarily always want to go. And I loved that about the team sport and being on the Bulls, being held accountable every day that I showed up. Hell, I had to anyway, because they were always looking to replace my non-drafted. But so it fit perfectly for what I was trying to do. In fact, I'll argue, having said all that MJ was on my keister harder than he was on some of those other dudes, because I went to North Carolina and I played for Dean Smith like he did. And so he demanded even more from me. Will Perdue tells me every time I'm on the golf course, like, how did you put up with MJ riding your ass all the time? And I went, because I wanted to be good. I wanted to get the most out of my body that I could. I wanted to win championships. And I saw what he was trying to do, and I was all in, all on board of what it was we were trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. So, Scott, I got 2 more questions for you. Obviously, we're joined by Scott Williams, 3-time NBA champion, here on CBS Sports Radio nationally. Scott, at the beginning of this interview, you played 15 years in the NBA as an undrafted player. When I think of undrafted, I think of Ben Wallace. That's the first one that comes to mind. I believe he's the only undrafted player to get into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I don't even think he played 15 years. I believe he came in 96. I don't think he played until 2011. I know he had that big contract with the Cavaliers. I got to check on that after this interview. So I think that's a feat in and of itself that's never been accomplished by anybody but you. When you look back at the 15 years that you had, coming again from someone that was undrafted, do you last 15 years without MJ?
No, and I my book is Through the Fire. I'm going to throw another plug in there because I want people to pick.
That was going to be my last question,
by
the way.
I don't have enough time to really get into it as deep as I wanted to. I was very fortunate that, having been undrafted, that I ended up on the best team, was going to be the best team in the NBA. I actually went down to Charlotte to try to make that roster down there, and they failed me on my physical. I got on a plane that afternoon, flew to Chicago, and they signed me to a non-guaranteed contract. I almost screwed it up. But I say all that to say that I was with professionals in Chicago. Yeah, MJ's the best player, and he put championship rings on my finger. But what John Paxson and Bill Cartwright did for me propelled me for my 15-year career, because they were always about being professional. It's one thing I learned early on. Some of the guys that got drafted in the lottery that year, we only had one Hall of Famer from the '90 draft class, and
that was a GP.
Gary Payton, that's correct. The number 2 pick in the draft.
Yep.
And I looked at some of those guys, and that was the year of the expansion. I think we had the Timberwolves, you had the Heat, you had the Magic.
Orlando was 89-90. You're right, because they were all
in about 3 years. Like, you had 4 new expansion teams, and some of those guys from the lottery went to those teams, and they weren't the best teams, and they didn't have the most veteran professionals on those squads to teach them how to be a pro. That was the best knowledge that I got playing with, like I say, even Craig Hodges taught me what it was to be a pro. Scottie Pippen's work ethic. Scottie wasn't the player that he turned into, the Hall of Famer that he turned into be when I was with him in '91 and '92. He was solid. But when he had an opportunity to play in the Dream Team the summer of '92 after we won our second championship, that flipped a switch in Pip that went on to propel him to be the Hall of Famer that he is. He got to be around Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, compete with the likes of Clyde Drexler, Patrick Ewing, Karl Malone, John Stockton. I can't even, name all the dudes off the top of my head.
Chris Mullin. Yeah.
Yeah. That changed his whole mindset of how hard he's got to work to be on the level of those cats. And he saw that I'm right there. I just got to turn it up just a little bit more. And then Scottie went on to do great things. But that's what it meant. Like for even a guy like Pippen to be around that. So for a guy like Williams to be around those dudes and to see not only how good they are, but how professional they are about always being on time for things, being locked in on your scouting report, being good in the community and showing up for all of the hospital visits or the court dedications. Those are the kinds of things that, being a good locker room guy, being a good teammate. I played 4 more years in this league on one leg and almost 0 left in the tank because teams wanted me. Cleveland came and got me off a beach in Cabo after I announced my retirement to come fix the locker room for a young LeBron James, and Jeff McGinnis weren't getting along. So I feel like, yes, Michael Jordan winning championships, people want to be associated with a winner. But the thing that made me last as long as I did was the professionals that I was with, Paxson, Cartwright, and Jordan.
That's really well said. And we are joined again by 3-time NBA champion Scott Williams here on CBS Sports Radio. Scott, full disclosure, we got about 3-4 minutes left, but I want to make sure this last question is geared towards your book. It was empowering. It was something that didn't just help people that follow basketball, that follow sports, but those that deal with hardships early on in their life. I've said this to you off air. I've had 2 guests in 2024, you and Bob Costas, and there's a reason for that. The words that you speak, they are not just helpful. They are not just something that is going to be impactful for people that follow sports. You do something that transcends sports and you talk about life. And I've always appreciated that from up close when I've interviewed you and from afar when I hear you do all kinds of other platforms. Please tell and enlighten our audience why they should get your book.
Well, I appreciate those kind words and an opportunity to share a little bit about my story because I didn't want to write another sports book, so to speak, and talking about the minutiae of my every game that I played or big series that I played or career high night that I had. I wanted to open up and share a little bit because during the pandemic and 2020, when everything was shut down and people were I think suffering a lot of depression. 5 kids on the campus of the University of North Carolina took their lives. And I was on that campus in my dormitory, Granville Towers, when Dean Smith knocked on my door and gave me the news that my father had killed my mother and then taken his life. And I had a lot of dark days after that, sitting in that dormitory at night. And I was still on the team and I would be good with my teammates, but it's, late at night. Having a lot of negative thoughts. I don't say I was ever, tried suicide, but I empathized with what kids today have to go through. There's so many more pressures than back in '87 when I was a college student. Online bullying. We didn't even have the internet back then. And everyone's got issues. And I wanted to share what it was that I went through from a child in an abusive household to losing my mother, my biggest supporter, and having to open up to people like a Coach Smith that wouldn't let me give up on my goals of getting an education, wouldn't let me give up on my dreams of playing in the NBA, and wanted people to see that here I am, Scott Williams, by far and away not a household name, but went on to achieve the things that I wanted to in life. I got my degree in radio, television, and motion pictures. I've been color commentating since I retired in 2005, whether it be at the NBA, the college level. And I owe a lot to that man, Dean Smith, and the Carolina family that wrapped me in that warm blanket of support. But as an individual, you have to take the time, you have to have the trust that you can find somebody that you can talk to, whether it's a teacher, a family member, or a coach, that you can open up when you're having down moments that can help you through very difficult situations. And that's why I wanted to write this book. I even when I point that I was talking when I was going through it, it took me 2 years to get it out because it's painful. It was hard to remember those moments of having to get that news from Coach Smith and then get on that plane and fly across the country and having separate funerals for my mother and my father because it was just so hard, and I was so bitter that he would do such a thing to my mother. And I want these kids to know that they too can get through those landmines in life and those pitfalls and overcome and still be part of and still go on to be something special and make my mother's legacy is what I'm trying to do, is make her proud. I'm trying to write this book to get awareness out there that maybe it might help one or two kids that might be suffering with some depression right now and not be and are in that dark place in that dormitory or in their childhood home, that they know that they can get through it.
Scott Williams, three-time NBA champion, superstar on and off the court. Can't thank you enough for your time. We got to do this again soon because I think there's a lot of people that want to hear even more about your story, even more than your basketball acumen, which is already really damn high. So thank you so much, sir, for making time for us. And we got to do this again soon.